My stepsons laughed. We only listened to our real dad. I shut down all their trips and online access, then texted their father, "Pick them up today." His reaction was priceless. My name is Ethan. I am 41 years old, and for nearly a decade I lived under the illusion that I had built a family. Looking back now, I see the truth more clearly than ever. I hadn't built anything of my own. I had merely propped up the ruins left behind by another man and called it home. 9 years ago, when I married Rachel, I stepped into her world with both feet. She already had 2 children, Liam and Mia. At the time, Liam was 9, wide-eyed and restless, already showing the stubbornness of a teenager. Mia was 6, delicate and affectionate, clinging to her mother's hand wherever they went. Their biological father, Mark, was little more than a rumor in their lives. He would appear a handful of times each year, bringing gifts like a magician pulling rabbits from a hat, shiny new sneakers, expensive gadgets, stuffed toys almost bigger than Mia herself. Then, just as quickly, he would vanish. No child support, no help with school fees, no presence at doctor's appointments or parent-teacher conferences. He was the fun dad, the one who breezed in with charm and money he barely had, only to disappear when the hard work of parenting began. And so the real responsibility, the invisible, grinding, thankless work, landed squarely on my shoulders. From the day I said, "I do," I understood that Rachel and her children weren't just becoming part of my life. I was binding myself to theirs, and it would be my income, my time, and my energy that would shape the roof under which we lived. I carried that weight willingly. I didn't hesitate when it came to providing for them. I bought us a house, modest but solid, a place that could be theirs in more than name. I paid for the groceries, for their school supplies, for the endless stream of clothes that children seem to outgrow overnight. I signed Liam up for soccer, paid for his gear, drove him to practices and matches, stood on the sidelines in the rain shouting encouragement until my voice cracked. I enrolled Mia in dance classes, sat through recitals where she stood in the back row half-hidden, clapping louder than anyone else when she remembered a single step. And it wasn't just money. I gave them my time, the one resource you can never earn back. I was there for homework struggles, late-night fevers, scraped knees, and tears over playground fights. I spent hours at the dining table with glue sticks and colored paper, helping them build dioramas and posters for school projects that they swore were due the next morning. I was the one driving them to the dentist, the doctor, the eye appointments, filling out every form, keeping track of every detail. Vacations? That was me too. I saved and planned so we could go somewhere once a year, even if it was just a road trip to the mountains or a rented cabin by the lake. I wanted them to have memories of family trips, something steady, something permanent. I wanted them to feel like their childhood wasn't broken just because their father had abandoned the hard parts. Evenings in our house became ritual. We would sit together on the couch, watching movies or playing board games, and they would curl against me as if I had always been there. On weekends, we went to the park for picnics, where Liam would chase a ball and Mia would braid grass into her hair. On Christmas mornings, I was the one kneeling by the tree, handing out presents, watching their faces light up with joy. For years, I believed I had become their father, not just in practice but in spirit. They called me Dad. Liam, in moments of pride, would shout it across the field, "That's my dad!" Mia, in a softer way, introduced me to her friends as her father, telling them she had the best dad in the world. I kept those words in my heart, used them as fuel during long nights when I stayed up working extra hours just to cover another round of expenses. I wasn't blind to the fact that I wasn't their blood. But love isn't about bloodlines. Love is about showing up every single day, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one thanks you. I showed up, again and again, and for a long time I believed it mattered. But if there is one thing life has taught me, it is this: consistency is not always rewarded. Sometimes it is taken for granted. Sometimes it is seen as weakness. I remember once, when Liam was 12, I took him to a father-son camping trip organized by the school. It wasn't cheap, but I paid it gladly. I wanted him to have that memory, that sense of belonging, of being part of something other kids had. We set up a tent together, cooked hot dogs on a fire, and stayed up late under the stars. That night, he leaned against me and said, "I'm glad you're my dad." Words like that, they sink deep. They become part of you. They make you believe you are building something real, something that will last. Mia, too, had her moments. On her 9th birthday, she wrote me a card in shaky handwriting. It said, "Thank you for being my dad. I love you." I kept that card in my desk drawer for years, tucked under important papers. Whenever I felt exhausted or unappreciated, I would open the drawer and see it, and it would remind me that what I was doing mattered. I was pouring myself into them, not just money but the very essence of who I was. And I did it gladly because I thought love could rewrite history. I thought love could erase the absence of their biological father and give them something better, something permanent. But love, I learned, does not erase blood. And no matter how much I gave, no matter how much of myself I invested, there would always be a shadow standing just outside the frame, the man who abandoned them, yet somehow still owned a piece of their hearts. For 9 years, I built a life on the fragile hope that my presence would be enough. For 9 years, I called them my children and believed they called me their father. I believed my sacrifices were seen, my efforts valued. I was wrong, and the price of that mistake would come later, when everything I thought I had built began to unravel piece by piece. 3 years ago, the ghost returned. Mark, the biological father, the man who had abandoned Rachel and left me to pick up the pieces, came back to town. I remember the first time I saw him again. He had that smug grin plastered across his face, like he hadn't missed a beat, like the years of absence didn't matter. He walked up the driveway holding a shiny box in one hand and a bag of takeout in the other, acting as though he were some kind of savior making his triumphant entrance. And just like that, the ground I had spent years leveling began to shift beneath my feet. First, it was just weekends. He'd pick Liam and Mia up on Saturday mornings, promising them adventures, and drop them off late Sunday evening when the fun was over. They would return with new gadgets, overpriced sneakers, and stories about amusement parks, bowling alleys, restaurants I couldn't afford to frequent every week. Mark didn't have to care about discipline or homework. He didn't have to worry about doctor's visits, insurance premiums, or bills. He swooped in with all flash and no responsibility. The kids were dazzled. Of course they were. To them, he was excitement, laughter, an escape from chores and rules. He didn't nag them to do homework. He didn't ask them to take out the trash or clean their rooms. He just showered them with food, trinkets, and attention. The easiest kind of love to give, because it costs nothing of yourself. And slowly, I began to hear the comparisons. Dad, Mark is cooler. Mark takes us to places you never do. He doesn't make us clean. He lets us order whatever we want. You're too strict. The first time Liam called me strict, I swallowed it. Rules were my way of keeping order in the house, teaching responsibility. I thought it was just teenage rebellion, something fleeting. But then Mia chimed in, echoing his words, almost as if they had rehearsed them together during one of their weekends with him. I looked at Rachel, expecting her to step in, to defend the structure I had spent years creating. But she just brushed it off with a faint smile. They're happy to have their dad around again. Don't take it personally. Not take it personally. As if the erosion of my role wasn't personal. As if the very children I had raised for nearly a decade telling me I wasn't enough could somehow be brushed off like dust. The comparisons didn't stop. They grew sharper, louder, and crueler. Liam, preparing for college applications, began to distance himself from me. One evening, during an argument about his grades, he cut me down with words that pierced deeper than any blade. "You're not our father. You never will be." It wasn't just what he said. It was the look in his eyes. Cold, detached, almost triumphant. As if by uttering those words, he had stripped me of my claim to him entirely. Mia, once my little girl, grew bold in her disloyalty. She stopped calling me dad altogether. When she introduced me to others, she used careful, calculated words. "This is my mom's husband. Not stepdad. Not dad. Just my mom's husband. A stranger who happened to share a roof." I'll never forget one particular moment. We were at a family gathering and Mark showed up. Mia pointed to him in front of a crowd of relatives and friends and proudly said, "That's my real dad." Her voice was bright, full of pride, as if I had been nothing but a placeholder all those years. I stood there, frozen, humiliated, while Rachel said nothing. She didn't correct her. She didn't comfort me later. She let it happen. The silence of my wife was its own betrayal. She claimed neutrality, said she didn't want to confuse the kids or make them choose between me and their father. But by saying nothing, she had chosen. Her silence was consent. The wedge drove deeper with every passing month. I became the bad cop, the enforcer of chores and curfews, while Mark was the hero who arrived with gifts and laughter. My sacrifices, my money, my time, my energy, were invisible, overshadowed by his flashy weekends and curated social media posts. He became a dad in the public eye, posting photos with Liam and Mia at restaurants, captioning them with words like family time and love my kids. Do you know what it feels like to spend thousands on braces, doctors, and tuition, only to see another man take credit with a few photos and a smile? To be erased, not by accident, but by preference? They ate at me. Every night, I would sit in silence after they went to bed, staring at the walls I had paid for, wondering when exactly I had stopped being their father and become just the man footing the bill. The final fracture came one evening when they called a family meeting. Rachel sat quietly at the table while Liam and Mia took the lead, their faces set with a defiance I had never seen before. "Ethan," Liam began, his voice steady, rehearsed, "you need to apologize to our dad." I blinked. Apologize? For what? For trying to take his place? Mia chimed in. "You're not him. You never were." Liam leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You should admit you were wrong to act like our father when he's still alive. You need to apologize to him, or we won't forgive you." I looked at Rachel. She stared at the table, her lips pressed together, silent as stone. No defense, no protest, no loyalty to me. In that moment, something inside me broke. Years of sacrifice, of love, of effort, all dismissed with a single demand. They wanted me to apologize for being the one who showed up. They wanted me to kneel before the man who had abandoned them. I sat back, my heart pounding with a cold, steady rhythm, and I spoke only 2 words. "All right." Their eyes lit up, thinking they had won. They thought I would swallow my pride, humiliate myself to appease them. But what they didn't understand was that all right did not mean surrender. It meant decision. It meant I had finally reached the end of endurance. I stood from the table, calm, collected. "I'll fix this," I told them. My voice was even almost gentle, and in my heart, I knew exactly how I would fix it. That night, after the so-called family meeting, I went upstairs without another word. They thought they had won. Rachel, silent as always, retreated into her phone. Liam smirked, proud of his defiance. Mia leaned against her brother like a conspirator who had finally tasted victory. They believed my quiet exit meant defeat. They had no idea that, in that silence, I had already made my decision. I walked into my study, shut the door, and sat in front of the computer. My hands were steady, my mind frighteningly clear. Years of humiliation, disrespect, and betrayal had been crystallized into that one moment, and I knew there would be no going back. If they didn't see me as a father, then I would no longer act like one. If Rachel thought silence was neutrality, then she could live with the consequences of her neutrality. If Mark was the man they wanted, then I would hand them over to him completely. I started with the money. I opened every account, every spreadsheet, every subscription that had my name attached to it. Liam's college fund, something I had spent years contributing to, cutting corners on my own life just so he could have a future, was the first to go. I withdrew my name, closed the accounts, canceled tuition payments. No more applications, no more deposits, no more promises. That door closed with a few keystrokes. Next was Mia's extracurriculars. Her soccer program, her summer trips, her music lessons, all billed to me. I canceled every single one. Each phone call, each confirmation email felt like cutting through another chain that had bound me to them. The polite voices on the other end of the line asked, "Are you sure you want to terminate this?" And each time I said yes with a calmness that would have terrified me a week earlier. Then came the luxuries, the credit cards they used freely, the streaming services, the phone plans, the allowances. I revoked it all. One by one, their little privileges, everything they had taken for granted, disappeared. By the time I was done, it was past midnight. The house was quiet, but I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. I was simply resolved. And then, I sent a single text. To Mark. Pick them up today. They only listen to you. His reply came minutes later. 3 words that dripped with disbelief. Are you serious? I didn't answer. The next morning, I began preparing the evidence. I printed every receipt, every invoice, every record of what I had spent over the past 9 years. The number was staggering. More than $300,000 had been poured into those children. Tuition, clothes, sports, vacations, braces, medical bills, food, housing, utilities, endless lists of things that Mark had never once contributed to. I placed it all neatly into a folder, a ledger of my sacrifice. Then I packed. Clothes, books, personal items, every belonging of Liam and Mia that I had ever bought. I gathered into boxes. I stacked them by the front door like luggage awaiting departure. When Rachel came downstairs, her eyes went wide. "What are you doing?" she asked. I looked at her without flinching. "Giving you exactly what you want." She didn't understand, not at first. She followed me around the house, her voice rising in panic, but she never actually said the words I wanted to hear. She never defended me, never told me I was wrong to act. She just asked, "Why are you doing this?" As though she hadn't sat in silence while her children demanded I kneel to the man who abandoned them. By noon, I loaded the boxes into my truck. I drove across town to the cramped little apartment where Mark lived. His name wasn't even on the lease. He was subletting from a friend, working night shifts to scrape by. When he opened the door and saw me standing there with his children's lives packed into cardboard, his bravado cracked. "What is this?" he demanded. "This," I said, setting the folder of receipts down on his counter, "is everything I've spent on your children. $300,000. You're their real father, aren't you? Then now they're yours." He sputtered, tried to argue, but I didn't let him. I placed the boxes neatly inside his apartment and walked away. The fallout was immediate. Liam's college plans disintegrated overnight. Without my money, he had no scholarships, no savings. He ended up flipping burgers at a fast food joint. The same boy who once sneered at me for being too strict, now wearing a visor and a name tag, serving impatient strangers. Mia's soccer dreams collapsed. No new gear, no club fees, no transportation. She quit within months, bitterness replacing the bright spark she once had. She spent most days sulking at Mark's apartment, scrolling through a cracked phone screen, realizing slowly that fun dad couldn't fund a future. Rachel fared no better. Without my income, the house we lived in was gone within weeks. She couldn't keep up with the mortgage. She moved in with her sister, crowding into a small apartment, struggling just to pay her share of the rent. The life of comfort and stability I had built for her crumbled like sand slipping through her fingers. As for me, I filed for divorce. I didn't look back. I walked away from the house, the family, the illusion. I carried only my dignity and the bitter knowledge that I had been used. I wish I could say they fought harder, that they begged me to stay, but the truth is, in those first days they believed they would manage without me. Rachel told me I was being cruel. Liam insisted he didn't need me. Mia clung to her father, still believing in the fantasy of the man who had abandoned her once already. But reality is relentless. It didn't take long before the weight of bills, responsibility, and consequence crushed them. And when it did, they turned their eyes back to me. But I was no longer there. I had become exactly what they claimed I was all along, an outsider, just the husband. A man with no ties left to bind him. Months passed in silence. At first, I expected anger, long, venomous messages, threats, attempts to guilt me back into the life I had walked away from. But instead, there was nothing. A hollow, empty quiet that echoed louder than any scream. They had chosen Mark. They had mocked me, dismissed me, told me I was nothing. And now they were living with the consequences of their choice. It took nearly half a year before the first cracks appeared. One evening, I came home to find a letter in my mailbox. The handwriting was shaky, uneven. It was from Liam. He wrote that he was sorry, that he hadn't realized how much I had done for him. He admitted that working long shifts at the fast food place had broken something inside him. I thought Dad Mark would make things easier, he wrote. But he can't even pay rent half the time. I don't know what I was thinking. You were there for me every single day, and I threw it back in your face. I read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. A week later, another letter arrived, this one from Mia. Her words were softer, filled with regret. She wrote about how she missed the stability of our house, how she missed the rides to practice, the evenings we spent playing board games, even the way I reminded her to brush her teeth before bed. She admitted she had been cruel, that she had parroted words she didn't fully understand. I just wanted to believe in Dad, she wrote. But now I see he's not who I thought he was. I want to come back home. Please. That letter, too, I placed in the drawer unread after the first time. I never picked up a pen to answer, because by then, I understood something they did not. Once a bridge is burned, you cannot cross it again. Rachel tried as well. She called once, late at night, her voice trembling. She told me she hadn't realized how much she depended on me until it was gone. She said the kids were miserable, that Mark was overwhelmed, that they were falling apart without the stability I had provided. She begged me to reconsider, to give them another chance. I let her speak until her words turned into sobs. Then I told her calmly, I gave everything I had, and when they demanded I apologize for it, you stayed silent. That silence was your answer. This is mine. And I hung up. The truth is, I did not leave because of a single insult. I left because of the accumulation, the years of small slights, of indifference, of being taken for granted. I left because when it came time for them to stand beside me, they chose to stand against me. That kind of betrayal cannot be undone with tears and apologies. Life moved on for me. I rebuilt, slowly, piece by piece. I met Claire, a woman who carries no hidden debts of the past. She has no children. She does not see me as a wallet, as a replacement, as a tool to fill the gaps left by another man. She sees me, just me. And for the first time in years, I feel like a partner instead of a provider. Every now and then, I run into my former family. At the grocery store, outside the gas station, once even in a diner where I stopped for coffee. They look older, worn down, tired. Liam's eyes are shadowed from long shifts. Mia hides her face, embarrassed, as though seeing me is a reminder of the life they once mocked. Rachel looks smaller now, as if the weight of her own choices has finally caught up with her. I don't speak to them. I don't need to, because I remember their laughter that night when they told me, "We only listen to our real dad." I remember the way Rachel stared at the table instead of defending me. And I remember how, in that moment, I finally saw the truth. I had never been their father in their eyes. I had only been the scaffolding, holding up a structure that collapsed the moment I stepped away. Do I feel regret? Sometimes. I regret the years I wasted, the money I poured into a future that was never mine, the love I gave to children who eventually weaponized it against me. But I do not regret leaving, because walking away was the first time I chose myself. Their lesson cost them a family, a home, a future I had built with my bare hands. My lesson cost me years, but it gave me clarity. It taught me that love without respect is hollow, that sacrifice without loyalty is slavery, and that silence, in moments of betrayal, is the loudest condemnation of all. Now, when I lie awake at night, I sometimes replay it all in my head. The trips, the laughter, the recitals, the games. I ask myself if there was something I could have done differently. Maybe if I had been more lenient. Maybe if I had ignored the comparisons. Maybe if I had confronted Mark earlier. But then I remind myself, none of that would have mattered. Because in the end, they made their choice. They chose the man who abandoned them over the man who raised them. and choices have consequences. So I leave you with this. When the people you love demand that you apologize for showing up, when they spit in the face of your sacrifice and choose absence over presence, what would you do? Would you keep giving, keep sacrificing, hoping one day they would see the truth? Or would you do as I did? Close the door, burn the bridge, and finally reclaim your dignity? Some bridges are not meant to be rebuilt. Some ashes are not meant to be sifted through. Sometimes the only way forward is to walk away and never look back.